you feel him, sir?
What if someone was insane enough to sit down and rank every single WrestleMania match that ever took place? Well, what if I told you that person was me with my very small YouTube channel and too much time on my hands and a small sinking part of me that always tries to be Adam Blompier because that was the wrestling YouTuber I watched the most growing up. Hence the tone that you're gonna hear very often in this fucking video because I'm a smartass. Ding. Anyways, yeah, for a little string of videos here, I'm going to be ranking every single WrestleMania match from WrestleMania 1 to WrestleMania 42. Yes, even that one. Again, there's the Adam Blompier thing. Yeah, kill me. Kill me! Now, here's the thing about WrestleMania being a thing for as long as it's been, and wrestling being a thing for how long as it's been, with the literally hundreds of thousands of wrestlers that have existed and wrestlers that have competed at WrestleMania. Just in this first video here, from WrestleMania 1 to WrestleMania 10, that's what we're going to be covering in this first video. There are 115 matches. I may have missed one because I'm human. Humans make mistakes. Feel free to let me know about it 50 times over in the comments section. But that's, again, 115 matches just from WrestleMania 1 to 10. It gets to a point where you're like, even if I sat down and watched all these matches, which for the most part I did outside of the matches that I just had general memory of, I walk away and at the end of the day, you just watched 115 matches. Holy shit. And a lot of these matches are products of just their generation, meaning not a lot was going on. You get an axe handle. Boom. We get a pump to the crowd. Boom. We get another axe handle. There's a third axe handle. That's a leg drop. Hulk Hogan, baby. Something to that level. So there's a lot of these matches that I'm going to be so for real with you. I watched, had no opinion of, then looked at general online opinion and was like, all right, yeah, I kind of agree with that. That's not to say I relied on online opinion for all of these, but there was a lot of moments where I looked at them and I was like, yeah, that's pretty accurate because I got nothing else to say. And that's how we're going to be kind of separating these matches. The first matches here are just straight up, I have no opinion / duds / dear God, just whoa. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, how can I put I have no opinion next to duds? And again, 115 matches, early WrestleManias. I'm doing my best. Now, there could be a match on here that you remember thinking, dear God, it wasn't that bad, or how the fuck is it that high? Yeah, let's discuss it, please. I love discussion, for one, and for two, I could be very wrong. If you stuck through that whole intro, fantastic. If you use the timestamp that I hopefully fucking put on the screen, I don't blame you. Let's get into things, starting with number 116, actually. I forgot to put an enter space in my document, but 116, and I'm not going to list every single one, just assume that we're going down one by one. That's how this is going to work. Again, these are the duds, no opinions, dear God wise. Starting with the worst WrestleMania match from WrestleMania 1 to 10, it is Yokozuna versus Hulk Hogan for the WWF World Title at WrestleMania 9. For the love of fucking God, look at it. Look at him and his black eye. Why? Why? Is also the worst WrestleMania 9 match, followed by the worst WrestleMania 2 match, Corporal Kirchner versus Nikolai Volkov. And then the worst WrestleMania 3 match, Koko B. Ware versus Butch Reed. Now, we don't have any more worst matches or anything like super notable, so I'm just going to run through these at a bit of a blistering pace here. Bear with me. Hillbilly Jim, Little Beaver, and the Haiti Kid versus King Kong Bundy, Lord Littlebrook, and Little Tokyo. Jake Roberts versus Rick Rude. Giant Gonzalez versus The Undertaker. Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake versus the Rigo Brothers. Big Boss Man versus Akeem. Andre the Giant versus Hulk Hogan. And I can already hear what you're saying. What? You mean the WrestleMania 3 match? No, the other one. The shitty one. King Kong Bundy versus SD Jones. Hercules versus Earthquake. Greg Valentine versus Junkyard Dog. Leilani Kai versus Wendy Richter. Tito Santana versus The Executioner. Harley Race versus Junkyard Dog. Tenryu and Kitao versus Demolition. Earthquake versus Greg Valentine. Red Rooster versus Bobby Heenan. Hercules versus King Haku. Brutus Beefcake versus David Sammartino. Ted DiBiase versus Brutus Beefcake. Legion of Doom versus Power and Glory. Fabulous Moolah versus Velvet McIntyre. That's the initial, like, oh my fucking God, whys. Now we're getting into this. This is bad. This is not enjoyable, but it's not the worst thing on earth. Starting with a bit of a famous one, Roddy Piper versus Mr. T in a boxing match. Hulk Hogan and Brutus Beefcake versus Money Inc. for the WWF Tag Titles. Money Inc. versus the Natural Disasters for the WWF Tag Titles. The 20-man WrestleMania Battle Royal in which Bad News Brown won. Honky Tonk Man versus Brutus Beefcake for the IC title. You know, I'm starting to see a trend, and his name rhymes with Chuddest Chudcake. Dino Bravo versus Don Morocco. Randy Savage versus One Man Gang. Randy Savage versus Butch Reed. Ricky Steamboat versus Greg Valentine. Bam Bam Bigelow versus One Man Gang, the British Bulldog versus Warlord, Kerry Von Erich versus Dino Bravo, Undertaker versus Jimmy Snuka, the worst WrestleMania 10 match, Earthquake versus Adam Bomb, Tito Santana versus the Barbarian, Hercules versus Billy Jack Haynes, Jake Roberts versus the Honky Tonk Man, Ted DiBiase versus Jim Duggan, Ted DiBiase versus Don Morocco. Now we're starting to get into the, okay, these are not bad, they're just meh. They're there. These are the bathroom break matches that aren't inherently awful. And this is where I feel like a lot of opinions are really going to start differing, so strap in. The Killer Bees versus Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. Big Boss Man Virgil, Sergeant Slaughter, Jim Duggan versus the Nasty Boys, Repo Man, and the Mountie. Men on a Mission versus the Quebecers for the WWF Tag Titles. Shawn Michaels versus El Matador. Rick Rude versus Jimmy Snuka. Jim Duggan versus Dino Bravo. Demolition versus the Colossal Connection for the WWF Tag Titles. Tito Santana versus the Mountie. The Rockers versus Barbarian and Haku. Ted DiBiase versus Virgil. Roddy Piper versus Bad News Brown. Leilani Kai versus Alundra Blaze for the WWF Women's Championship. Jake Roberts versus Andre the Giant. Paul Orndorff versus Magnificent Morocco. Adrian Adonis versus Uncle Elmer. Jake Roberts versus George Wells. Bad News Brown versus Jim Duggan. Jake Roberts versus The Undertaker. Hulk Hogan versus Sergeant Slaughter for the WWF World Title. Demolition versus the Powers of Pain and Mr. Fuji for the WWF Tag Titles. The Rockers versus the Twin Towers. Randy Savage versus George Steele for the IC title. WWF versus NFL 20-man Battle Royal featuring the winner, Andre the Giant. And we're coming at number 50, which is where we're starting to get into, okay, this is all right. I like this. Which is Hulk Hogan and Mr. T versus Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. Don't worry, eventually I'll start having opinions on these. It's just that, holy shit, so many matches. Bear with me. Back at it with number 49, Ultimate Warrior versus Rick Rude for the WWF IC title. Andre the Giant versus Big John Studd at WrestleMania 1, which is the worst WrestleMania 1 match. Followed by the worst WrestleMania 5 match, the Fabulous Ragos versus the Bushwhackers. The Islanders and Bobby Heenan versus British Bulldogs and Coco Beware. Dino Bravo versus Ron Garvin. Doink versus Crush. Bret Hart versus Yokozuna for the WWF World Championship. Ricky Steamboat versus Hercules Hernandez. Jake Roberts versus Ted DiBiase for the $1 million title. The Hart Foundation versus Greg Valentine and Honky Tonk Man. Hercules versus Ultimate Warrior in the worst WrestleMania 4 match. We are now getting into, okay, good match time. These are good matches. These are all right. I wouldn't put them at the top of any underrated list, but they're good. They're doing good for what they can do. Starting with Terry and Haas Funk versus Tito Santana and Junkyard Dog. Hulk Hogan versus Sid Justice in the worst WrestleMania 8 match. Strikeforce versus the Brainbusters. The Rockers versus the Orient Express. Greg Valentine versus Randy Savage. Tatanka versus Rick Martel. Mr. Perfect versus Blue Blazer. Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant for the WWF title. Bob Backlund versus Razor Ramon. Randy Savage and Sensational Sherry versus Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire. Bam Bam Bigelow and Luna Vachon versus Doink and Dink. Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo versus the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. Hart Foundation versus the Bolsheviks in the worst WrestleMania 6 match. Owen Hart versus Skinner. Can-Am Connection versus Magnificent Morocco and Bob Orton. Now we're starting to get into proper good matches. These are good. You should check them out. Underrateds. Jake Roberts versus Rick Martel in a blindfold match in the worst WrestleMania 7 match. Randy Savage versus Crush in a Falls Count Anywhere match. Hart Foundation and Danny Davis versus the British Bulldogs and Tito Santana. Mr. Perfect versus Big Boss Man for the WWF IC title. Lex Luger versus Mr. Perfect. Matt Bourne versus Ricky Steamboat in the best WrestleMania 1 match. Hart Foundation versus the Nasty Boys for the WWF Tag Titles. Lex Luger versus Yokozuna for the WWF World Title. The Steiner Brothers versus the Head Shrinkers. Now we are getting into great matches. Pretty much everything from here and up. It's great. It should be checked out. And we're also at number 12. Roddy Piper versus Adrian Adonis in a hair versus hair match. Number 11 is Randy Savage versus the Ultimate Warrior in a retirement match, which is also the best WrestleMania 7 match. And now we're here at the top 10. This is where I'm going to start actually talking, 11 minutes into the recording process. You're probably sitting here like 9 minutes into the edited video like, holy shit, is he actually going to give us any details? Or just shit on my favorite match, and my Meemaw's favorite match, and Don Morocco's favorite match? Well, this is where we get to start talking. Number 10 is Demolition versus Strikeforce for the tag titles, which is also the best WrestleMania 4 match. You want to talk about early on in tag team excellence? I have heard so many people talk about the greatest tag team matches of all time, and you always get stuff like, the New Day, the Usos, the Hardys, Edge and Christian, the Dudleys. Tag teams were very much in the modern half of pro wrestling, but this is a match that I think deserves so much more. It just needs to be talked about more. It's such a good match from WrestleMania 4, back when tag team championships, I don't think they gave a fuck about them. They're just like, hey, we got two guys who look good together. Give them a little bit of gold. Make it silver, actually. Fuck you. Very fantastic work. Strikeforce, one of the most underrated tag teams of all time. And I do mean underrated because you have so many tag teams constantly in the conversation. There are more underrated teams than you realize. Number 9, Roddy Piper versus Bret Hart for the WWF IC title. Two absolute workhorses, some of the best of their generation at different times in their careers, the most underrated in their generation. Yeah, obviously, Bret Hart goes on to win world titles, but goes on to become a household name, the likes of which not many were seen in a post-Hogan era. Bret Hart was truly up there before we really started getting constant main event name after main event name after the one main event name dominating everything. And then you have Roddy Piper, who is, I would argue, the most underrated wrestler of all time. So many wrestlers themselves will tout Roddy Piper as an absolutely great name. But when you ask fans, you'll get a couple here and there, but then other fans are going to go towards modern big names like your Kenny Omegas, your Seth Rollins, or going back a few eras, you're going to have like your Kurt Angles, your Samoa Joes, your AJ Styleses. People who definitely deserve that moniker. But Roddy Piper, I would say the most underrated wrestler of all time. This and the Adrian Adonis match are two matches that I believe are all-time classics without the recognition they deserve. Number 8, Ted DiBiase versus Randy Savage for the WWF title. You've seen it a million times. You've heard about it. You've seen it in promo packages. This right here is proof that Randy Savage was arguably, I'm going to say something, the best wrestler in the WrestleMania 1 to WrestleMania 10 era. And you want to know why he's the best wrestler in that era? Because he's got a few more matches in this top 10 still to come. Number 6, Bret Hart versus Owen Hart. I don't need to tell you a damn thing about this match. This is brother versus brother. This is heat. This is fire. This is blood. This is brilliance. The best family rivalry match you will ever see under the WWE banner. I challenge you to come up with a better one. Number 5, Shawn Michaels versus Tatanka for the WWF IC title, which is the best WrestleMania 9 match. Who would have thought Tatanka would be in a top 5 of any wrestling list? Shawn Michaels is without a doubt one of the best wrestlers in WWE's history. I will say, I don't think he's the best wrestler for the 1 to 10 era just because Randy Savage is right there, and I just literally talked up Randy Savage. But my God, all-time greatest wrestler, Mount Rushmore. I'm not talking draws. I'm talking everything. From draw to work rate to in-ring ability to star power. Shawn Michaels, Mr. Heartbreak Kid, Mr. Sexy Boy is right there. Number 4, Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior for the WWF IC and World Championships, the best WrestleMania 6 match. Hulk Hogan is easy to dunk on, but you also can't deny that he was WrestleMania. He was wrestling. He was WWE or WWF for the longest time. And obviously in the modern era, we know a lot more. We've heard a lot more. We've seen a lot more. But Hulk Hogan is undeniably a large part of WWE's history and always will be, as much as I despise it. He is wrestling, and this match right here is Hulk Hogan's version of wrestling versus Ultimate Warrior's version, which Ultimate Warrior is just an evolution on the Hulk Hogan formula, if you really think about it. The showboating, the moves that shouldn't be a fucking finisher, but put you away with a snap of a finger. This match is, I think, the best Hogan match probably ever. Number 3, Randy Savage versus Ricky Steamboat for the Intercontinental Championship, which is also the best WrestleMania 3 match. I know. A lot of you are thinking, how the hell is this not number 1? What's wrong with you? You should go drink acid. Not the fun acid, the bad acid, the acid that makes you dissolve. Now listen, this match isn't bad whatsoever. It's number 3 on the damn list. Randy Savage and Ricky Steamboat is what many people consider to be the best WrestleMania match of all time, especially of this era. But in my personal opinion, as fantastic as it is, there's 2 more matches that just barely beat it out. One of those being Number 2, Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon for the WWF Intercontinental Championship, the best WrestleMania 10 match. Come on, it is the first like genuine weapons match at a WrestleMania. It's the first match that is proper, not just a no DQ with like, oh, a steel chair coming in. It's not just, oh, we have someone doing outside interference. They're on ladders. They're climbing the fuckers. I'm not talking much about it because it's been talked about to death. It is, I think, Razor Ramon's best match possible. Shawn Michaels' best match? Hard to say. I do think that Shawn has a couple better matches later on in his career. I mean, for God's sake, WrestleMania 25 and 26 are right there. But listen, this is, like I said, historical for many reasons. It's not the first ladder match. I don't think it's the first these two faced off in a ladder match. I think it was like a house show or something that involved the both of them facing each other, or at least one of them was involved in it. But my God, is it a classic show of the future high-stakes, high-elevation action that you would see at WrestleMania. Now, finally, nearly 20 minutes into my recording here at my little home with my Rock Band microphone that I'm using to record this with, number 1, the best match from WrestleMania 1 through 10, the best WrestleMania 8 match. It's for the world title. It is Randy Savage versus Ric Flair. It is insane to think about just how good Ric Flair truly was. You hear, you know, the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. Wait, no shit, I think that's a Bret Hart thing. Ah, fuck. Well, to be the man, you got to beat the man, and that statement is nowhere near as important and noted as a match like this. Randy Savage versus Ric Flair is an all-time classic. Ric Flair, a lot of people seem to think he was always old and slow, but Ric Flair genuinely was the best of his generation. WWF, WCW, the territories. You put him in a company, and he's the best there. You gotta remember, he was okay in the early to mid 2000s. This is him arguably at his peak. This is him as the man, the true nature boy. Fuck off, Billy Graham. This is Ric Flair at his best, and Randy Savage showing why he, too, is one of the best in his generation. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the ranking of every WrestleMania match from WrestleMania 1 to WrestleMania 10. Like I said, a lot of, you know, who knows what I'm really thinking opinions in here. But, I mean, hey, that's what these videos are for. We talk about it. We discuss it. You tell me that I'm wrong and that I should do things that can't be said in a YouTube video, but I'm sure you'll say in the comments section. It's stuff like that. Next time, we're going to be looking at WrestleMania 11 to 21, and this is where we started getting things into sort of my era of when I actually watched wrestling. I started like watching wrestling as a kid when I was WrestleMania 17, so I'm looking forward to that. But for now, what'd you think of this list? What'd you think of me putting a Nasty Boys match in the top 20 of a list? It's fucking crazy, isn't it? It's crazy to think about. I hope you're having a good day. I hope you're staying hydrated. Thank you for watching One Star Wrestling.